Enough time has passed so we can really see how the nerfs and the buffs affected the meta right now. So in this video I will give you the 5 best Hearthstone decks right now, their mulligans, win rate, and some general tips for them too. But we're also gonna check out all of the other working archetypes for each individual class, so stick around to the end. If you're serious about Hearthstone, drop a like and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget you can hire me for some Hearthstone coaching. Now let's check out the decks.
You are not prepared!
The first deck on the list is gonna be undisputably Arcane Hunter. Arcane Hunter is doing amazingly well from Diamond to Legend, as well as in top 1000 Legend, so it definitely deserves the #1 spot right now. The deck didn't really get nerfed too much, aside from Costume Singer losing 1 attack, but it's still a pretty good card, even though, gotta be honest, it has affected the early game for the deck quite a bit, because in the end of the day you are a phase deck and every point of damage counts. Not to mention it also doesn't allow you to do as good value trades with it if you need to, and it also just dies without killing the opponent's minion a lot of the times too. Anyway, the deck is looking pretty standard, it has all of the good cheap arcane spells, Awakening Tremors is a ton of stats, the 2 tricks you usually should be seeing against you with this deck is Cat Trick and Hidden Meaning, so play accordingly, but some people do slap in zombies if they feel like it, or even bait and switch instead of the Cat Trick, which can also be pretty annoying. You can also get a bunch of those different secrets from your Titan Forge traps, and that can go pretty clutch. You can amplify your spell power with Calderon, as well as with your 2 Silver Moon Forest Riders, and having basically 24 damage across 4 turns, usually for something like 3 or 4 mana each of these weapons, is pretty insane as well, and also Agromar has a mean weapon to it too. This deck is all about the tempo, and you have tons of it, but you also have anti-tempo for the opponent with your secrets, because if you slap a Hidden Meaning, the opponent is probably gonna try and not play all of his mana for quite a few turns, and that is just so much negative tempo for them, it's not even funny. Getting all of those random Titan Force traps is also pretty much negative tempo for the opponent, and the Cat Trick is also a ton of stats, just for 2 mana, so that's pretty nice too. What you want to be doing in the early turns is get some damage on the board from your minions, and in the mid game you want to transition from weapon damage and from hand damage with all of your spells, as well as your Kraken Banes. Matchup wise, as you can see, you literally don't have any bad ones. And Rage Warrior apparently is somewhat of a bad one, but you're really not gonna see too much of those. Totem Shaman is about 50-50, and same goes for Hound Hunter, which is honestly probably your worst matchup, and it does feel a bit worse than this, because fighting off several Hounds is not fun with this deck. Mulligan wise, here's what the stats show. Calderon is always amazing, Costume Singer on turn 1 is great, Awaken Tremors is also amazing. I wouldn't really hold on to the Titan too much going first, even with a perfect curve. Trinket Tracker is not a bad 1-drop, but if you already have Costume Singer, maybe you're not gonna hold on to it. Silver Moon Forest Rider, I think you'd only keep if you already have something like Eversong Portal in your hand when going first, because other than that you really don't want to be playing it on turn 2, because you're only gonna have like, what, 2 or 3 max arcane spells, and it's probably not gonna be that worth it on curve. If you don't already have Costume Singer, I'm not against keeping things like Hidden Meaning as well. The Titan Forge Trap can feel pretty awesome, and I would never really keep Conjured Arrow going first, so keep that in mind. When on the coin, again Calderon's amazing, and here even the Titan makes a bit more sense, even though as you see, again it's not very keepable, I guess you have to have a very perfect hand for it. Tremor's still amazing, Costume Singer is still good. Conjured Arrow, again I really wouldn't consider keeping it too much. Silver Moon here makes a bit more sense because you're gonna have an extra card, so a bit more spells to get spell power on. And Eversong Portal here becomes a lot more keepable too. Titan Forge Trap's still amazing, and again if you don't have a good 2-drop, Hidden Meaning can still make the cut. For other good Hunter decks, Hound Hunter is still pretty good, even though the sample size for it is a lot lower nowadays, so people are not playing it as much, but it's still a pretty mean deck, and nerfing the Hound's health is really not that big a deal for it, honestly. On a very close second spot, we also have Pure Paladin, which has been doing amazingly well from Diamond to Legend, even though not as much in Top Legend, but still it's a pretty good deck. This again is a pure list with the Dude package in, as well as the Crusader Aura, and that really feels like an amazing deck right now. We also have Anachronos in here, which can save you from very sticky boards. Amidas is actually insanely good in this deck as well, because not only she can buff the entire board with +2/+2 on your side, but also your minions only take 2 damage a time, so it basically prevents the opponent from actually doing some good board removal clears, and that is insanely strong for the deck, so A lot of people are asking if you can play this deck without the Titan. You can, but it is gonna be worse. The Curator is still in here, and he's drawing a lot of cards in this one because you also have a couple of Jukebox totems, which are both mechs and totems, but you also have Leviathan as a mech, both your Light Rays are obviously elemental beasts nowadays, and Sinful Sous Chef as undead, so you can draw up to 6 cards with this one. So if you have the Curator, make sure to try and dispense your hand a bit more. Other than that, we have the good 1-draws with Boogie Down to pull with, Class Action is insane, Hand of Alol gives you the card draw, Muster for Battle with Buffet Biggin and Warhorse Trainer is insanely good, and it gives you a lot of minions for your Crusader aura, and yeah, we still have the Countess and all at rest, so pretty good deck. And the main thing you should be doing with this one is filling the board, but not overextending, because there's a lot of control decks out there. You just want to fill the board big enough so you can actually take a big swing at the opponent that warrants a removal, and if they have the removal, you just refill, and if they don't, you slap again. So yeah, don't overextend with this one, and you should be climbing in no time. As for the matchups, here's what the stats show, and Curse Warlock is definitely gonna be annoying because Defile is quite the mean card against you. Rainbow Mage apparently is also not great, but all around climbing should not be too hard with it. As for the matchups, here's what the stats show going first, and I'm not sure why this is so small, like we actually have like what, 1000 plus games with it, so this shouldn't really be with exclamation points, but it is what it is. Anyway, if you have a good curve going, Buffet Biggin is gonna be amazing both first and second, Boogie Down's still amazing, Sanguine Soldier is your best 1-drop, but also Sinful Sous Chef is pretty good. If you already have a good curve, the Curator can be a keep. If you already have a good curve, Crusader aura can be a keep. Muster for Battle is amazing. Depending on the matchup, Blood Matriarch on Tempo can be great. Titan wouldn't really keep it. Righteous Protector, it's an acceptable 1-drop if you don't have anything else, but if you already have one, you probably don't want a second one. Jukebox Totem is also not the worst thing in the world to be keeping, and if you already have a good 1-drop, Hand of Adal can also be good. Depending on the matchup, even Class Action Lawyer might make some sense, but as you see, it's not very high on the keep list. As for when on the coin, here's what the stats show again, and you still want your good 1-drops, Buffet Biggin, Muster for Battle, the Totem still, Boogie Down, Hand of Adal. And if you already have Muster for Battle, you might even consider keeping Warhorse, because turn 2 Muster into turn 3 Warhorse, that's a lot of damage. As for other good pally lists, we also have the aggro pally, which is doing fine, with a bunch of neutral cards like Sylvanas and Magatha. We can also see the old variant with the weapon still doing somewhat fine. Mech pally is also 55%, so it's definitely usable, but the new Urban Paladin is still kinda ass. On number 3 spot, we have a very cheap Drum Druid, which is actually doing very amazingly right now, and it's even better than the top your list, with just a little bit, but it is indeed better, especially if you're facing a lot of aggro in this meta. This variant has a lot more early game, and it's also actually including the Embrace of Nature now, but you're also running sticky cards like Lingering Zombie, as well as Plot of Sin, which is giving you 2 Trance for free mana, which also is discounting your Cultivation. This is actually not the super budgeted variant, but it is running 2 Disciples of Eonar, as well as 2 Widowbloom Seedsmen, but it still runs 0 legendaries, so it's definitely very budget friendly. With a Forged Embrace of Nature, you're always gonna be getting your Drum Circle, with both effects, as long as you haven't drawn them already, and you can play them out really fast with the help of your Innervates and with your coin if you're going second. You're not running the Blossom in this one, so you can't really discount him lower, but you could discount him with your Summer Flower Child, but if you get it through that, you're also gonna have to play Disciple of Ionar, so it's still gonna be a turn 6 Drum Circle. This deck is actually extremely powerful even against control matchups, as long as you know what control tools you're playing against. Like if you're against a Blood DK, you gotta do everything you can to actually build a very big board before turn 8 comes. If you're against a Warrior, you gotta play around somewhat well against things like Blade Storm and Brawl, and if you're against the Priest, well, it's not gonna be very fun because you don't have top Euro in this one, but if you are running the top Euro list, Priest is also very winnable, as long as you keep on spamming those nature spells. Technically, if you already have Disciple of Ionar, and you also have Embrace of Nature, you don't really need to actually forge this one, because if you're just gonna be playing Disciple anyway, you might just wanna save yourself that extra 2 mana do nothing, and even just hero power, because in some cases that 1 extra armor could be the difference between life and death. But also don't always forge this on turn 2, because if you don't have anything to do on turn 3 anyway, you're just gonna forge and play this for free mana anyway, so might as well just hero power on turn 2 as well, or just do something else altogether. Planning out when to use your cultivation is also pretty important, because we all know it feels great just to plop out all the stats on the turn you get to play the drum, but if you are expecting some sort of removal from the opponent, might as well just save the cultivation for when you actually have attacking minions, as long as you're actually not trying to get away from a breakpoint for certain removals, let's say Priest 6 6 damage AoE, or Warlock 6 damage AoE, and so on and so forth. As for the matchups, here's what the stats show, and Mech Rogue is gonna be pretty bad, as well as, like I said, Control Priest. But everything else looks pretty good though. As for the mulligans, here's what the stats show. And when going first, apparently Summerflower Child is pretty awesome in this one. Witchwood Apple is definitely not horrible. Lingering Zombie to give you some stuff to do. Depending on the matchup also Forest Seedlings. Widowbloom can be good, Disciple can be good. Drum you don't really want to keep, especially since you have Embrace of Nature in this one. And I would also keep Embrace of Nature, like what the hell. Pretty weird that the win rate is this low, but maybe people are just forging on turn 2 like I said, so that might be a little bit of a problem. And if you already have some of those cards, even Innervate might make some sense, but maybe when going second is gonna be a bit better. And when going second, here's what the stats show again, and here it's pretty similar, but apparently Summerflower Child becomes a lot less keepable for some reason, and that looks kinda odd. And also Widowbloom Seedsman is not that amazing of a keep as well, it seems, even though it does feel nice. For other good Druid decks, like I said, the top pure variant is also doing very good with the Lifebinder's Gift. There's also the variant with the Blood Trent, which is pretty good. And there's also an above 50 deck, which is using the Titan as well as Jailer, but it's not as amazing as the rest of them. On the number 4 spot, we still have Unholy Death Knight doing quite well, and this is exactly the same variant I showed you last time, with the inclusion of the Primus. Everything else in the deck is very much the same as it used to be, and the only spells you're running in this one are Grave Strength, so you don't mess up with your Magatha. Matchup wise, here's what the stats show, and you're actually even good against Control Warrior, which looks kinda weird, but Control Warriors do have a lot of removal, but it's definitely not infinite, and it doesn't always clear everything for the opponent anyway, so it's pretty good. Control Priest is on the iffy side, as well as Thaddeus Warlock, but everything else looks pretty good. For the mulligan, here's what the stats show. If you already have a good curve going, even Magatha is a lot of gas for you. Arms Dealer your best 1-drop, and if you already have a good 1-drop like that or Bodybagger, a Vicral Necrolite is also good. Hawkstrider is nice. Battlefiend Necromancer is especially good if you have a Bodybagger already, or a Tour Guide at least. Skeletal Sidekick is not really something you want to be keeping when going first, and if you already have a good curve going, even Pozic might make some sense. As for when on the coin, Murlocula, I wouldn't really hold on to Murlocula, I don't know, it feels a little bit iffy to me. Hawkstrider and Bodybagger and Tour Guide still great. And yeah, even Nerubian Swarmguard makes some sense here, but apparently Magatha not as amazing going second. For other good Death Knights right now, Blood DK is also doing fairly well, even though it's not as amazing as it used to be, only sitting at 53. Plague Death Knight is also decent at 52, and that's about it for the Death Knight list right now. Frost DK is just a shell of its former glory right now. And on the last spot we have Mech Rogue, which is doing quite well, and it's doing both good in Top Legend as well as from Diamond to Legend. I really hate decks that are using the Prison of Yogg, but it's basically a Hail Mary card, and when all else fails, that might be good enough for you, because it's just a single card that can do pretty stupid things up to 3 times. And yeah, I really hate cards like this in Hearthstone Standard, honestly, but it is what it is. We're also running Pozic in this one, which does make a good amount of sense, even though it would have been even more amazing if Pozic was a mech himself. Potion Master Putricide actually also made it into this list, which is pretty interesting because I did used to run Putricide in my first variant of Mech Rogue, so it's interesting to see how the deck is circling back to that idea, because there are actually plenty of 1-drops you can get potions from. But yeah, the rest of the deck's pretty much the same. This one is not running the Mothership package, but all in all it does play out pretty much similarly. Matchup wise, Control Warrior is not going to be amazing for you, as well as Arcane Hunter, but the rest looks good, even though the stats are not very populated just yet. As for the mulligans, going first, here's what it looks like, and having a turn 1 is pretty important in this one, both with Click Clocker and Frequency Oscillator, but also the drone is pretty nice. Mimron on turn 2 can be super good if you have the Oscillator already, and Ventomatic is usually not that amazing of a turn 2, but it still works honestly. If you already have a Prep and Bone Spike, you might keep those two, even though when going first that's a little bit too greedy in my book, but this is what the stats show, and from the Scrap Heap also makes a lot of sense. And I would be keeping the Coppertail Snoop a lot of the times too. As for when on the coin, again, the 1-drops are great. Gear Shift, kinda iffy honestly, you don't really want to be spending the 1 mana this early for card draw. Coppertail still great, from the Scrap Heap as well. We're also running Astalor in this one apparently, but you're not really keeping it. But yeah, still get those 1-drops and start curving. For the other good rogue decks right now, we still have the Big Rogue as well doing well, and there's still the variant with the Lab Constructor doing fine. There's also a list with Containment Unit, and you gotta scroll all the way to the bottom to see something different from Mech Rogue, and we have Secret Rogue doing barely above 50 and Miracle Rogue under 50. For the decks we didn't mention, starting off with Demon Hunter, we have Outcast doing somewhat fine with a very small sample size. Relic Demon Hunter is doing barely above 52 with a good sample size, however. And Spell Demon Hunter is nothing close to what it used to be. For Mages, Rainbow Mage is the best performer right now, and it's working really good in Top Legend as well. Naga Mage under 50%, and I really do believe it's a skill issue because the deck can definitely feel pretty crazy. And people are farming rank 1 Legend with it, so very high skill cap, but a lot of people are butchering the win rate, it feels. And Mech Mage is nothing to write home about. With Priest, Shadow Priest is doing amazing, Control Priest is also pretty annoying still, and that's about it for the Priest. Automaton Priest still under 50. With Shaman, Totem Shaman is taking the number 1 spot for the class, and Nature Shaman is actually looking pretty ass as well. With Warlock, I almost included Thaddeus Warlock in this list again, because it is actually having some pretty serious stats, and yeah, with Thaddeus getting nerfed the way it did, it actually feels like a buff in certain cases, because you can actually play a lot of zero cards this way, which wasn't the case before, so it's definitely kind of questionable if Thaddeus is gonna remain like this, or maybe they're gonna touch it a bit further, because this is actually unlocking other pretty oppressive decks out there too, which are not having a huge win rate, but they're pretty annoying to lose against when it actually clicks. Control Warlock is doing fine as well, and same goes for the new Imp Fatigue Warlock, which is something we haven't seen in quite a while. Curse Warlock is also above 50-50, and that's about it for Warlock. And for Warrior, I almost included Control Warrior as well, but as you can see, sitting at 57%, it's not actually as high as the other decks on the top 5, so there's that. But yeah, Control Warrior with the 30 variant is doing best right now, and again, it's running the crappy Prison of Yogg. Control Warrior with the 40 variant is also playable at 56% almost. And Enrage Warrior is about 52%, which is definitely not as amazing as it used to be. But yeah, you do have plenty of Control Warrior lists out there right now, so we can finally play that archetype again. So that's gonna be it for this top 5, guys. Hope this helps you figure out what you want to be playing in the new Hearthstone season. If you're serious about Hearthstone, drop a like and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget you can hire me for some Hearthstone coaching. Thanks for watching. I'm Kris05, and I'll see you in my next video or stream.